All right, so in order to build up our virtual environment and interact with the labs in this course, we'll need to set up a hypervisor. Now, a hypervisor is just a layer of software that lets us run virtual machines, or VMs, on our host computer. And this is what allows us to spin up a lab environment without needing separate physical machines. And so there are a ton of different hypervisor technologies out there. VMware, VirtualBox. You can even use platforms like Proxmox to build out your lab if you want. And so I encourage you to use whatever you're most comfortable with to set up the VMs for this course. It kind of just depends on your host operating system and what you're looking for in terms of performance and usability. VirtualBox is usually the easiest starting point, and that's what I've gone with here. It's free, it's open source, and it runs on Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. If you've never set up a VM before, this is the most straightforward option as a Type 2 hypervisor. The installation is just as simple as going to Oracle's website here and downloading the installer for VirtualBox, and then just following the prompts to install it on your host operating system. And I'll provide some references on the VirtualBox documentation so you can get up and running with it as well. So for most cases, VirtualBox is entirely sufficient and is a good baseline option. Now, if you prefer to use VMware, that's perfectly fine too. VMware is very similar to VirtualBox. I guess you could say a bit more refined and stable as a virtualization platform, at least in my experience. Now, on Windows and Linux hosts, the product you'll be looking for is VMware Workstation. This used to come in two different versions, so we had Workstation Player and Workstation Pro, but as of late last year, VMware has made Workstation completely free for all users. On Mac OS hosts, VMware's equivalent product is VMware Fusion. Now, Fusion was also split into a Player and Pro editions in the past, but now Fusion is completely free for everyone as well. And so if you're on Mac and you're not using an Apple Silicon chip, Fusion is an excellent choice here as well. And so I'll have the links for VMware referenced as well. But you'll just need to create a Broadcom account, I believe, in order to download the actual VMware installation binaries. Things get a bit more complex with newer Macs that are using Apple Silicon chips, the M1, M2, M3, and so forth, which are based on the ARM architecture. And so this means that hypervisors and guest operating systems designed for x86 won't run on these Macs without emulation. Now, VMware Fusion has added support for Apple Silicon, but it doesn't support running x86 operating systems. Instead, it can only virtualize ARM-based systems, and so it's possible to use it for Windows 11 for ARM, as well as ARM-compatible Linux distributions like Ubuntu. Now, some other virtualization solutions like Parallels Desktop do include a limited x86 emulation layer, allowing you to run certain x86 applications within an ARM-based Windows virtual machine, but this is a separate and distinct feature from the hypervisor itself. Another option on Apple Silicon is UTM. Now, UTM is a free and open source hypervisor built on top of Apple's own virtualization framework. And again, with UTM, you'll usually be limited to running ARM-compatible operating systems. For our course labs, these Apple Silicon chips will have some important implications for running Splunk. The official Splunk Docker image is built for x86-64, and so it can't run natively inside an ARM-only VM. In theory, it's possible to work around this by using Docker Desktop for Mac, which includes x86-64 emulation and allows the Splunk image to run as intended, but your mileage may vary here. On Intel Macs or on Windows or Linux hosts, the Splunk Docker image runs normally inside any VM. And so again, your choice ultimately comes down to your host machine and preferences. What matters is that you're comfortable installing, managing, and networking your virtual machines. In the next part here, we'll go through the process of actually acquiring the ISOs and creating our lab virtual machines. Once you've selected and installed and prepared your hypervisor of choice, you'll be ready to create the systems that we'll be using within our analyst lab. All right, and so what I've done here from my host operating system is navigate over to the VirtualBox website to download VirtualBox. Now we're going to see that we have different VirtualBox platform packages listed here, and so we just need to select the one that our current operating system is using. And so obviously I want the installer for Windows hosts if I'm running Windows, so that's what I'll click on. And it's just going to download the executable for us right here. And so once that's complete, I'm just going to click on Open File and just run through the prompt here. So it gave me a UAC prompt to open up VirtualBox. And then I'm just going to run through the guided installer. And so we might see that we need Microsoft Visual C++ in order to run VirtualBox or set up the installation. And so that's what we need to do here. And so I'll just click Finish here. We're going to see that we had an install error, so that's completely normal if you ran into this. We just need to find our way over to this Microsoft documentation here, which I'll have referenced, to download the Microsoft Visual C++ library. And so if I scroll down here, we're going to see different download links or executables depending on our architecture, right? And so just select the architecture you're using. In this case, I'm just going to select x64 here, and that's going to download the installer here. And so I'm just going to agree and click install. And that should just take a second. We'll see setup successful. Perfect. And now I can go ahead and try to install VirtualBox once more, and we shouldn't run into that same error. There we go. So we're going to see this little welcome message, and I just need to run through this installation wizard here. You can change where you want to save it if you'd like. It's going to give us a warning about disconnecting the network, which it needs to do as it installs. And I'm just going to select the default options for everything here and click on install. And there we go. We can see that VirtualBox has been installed. We can keep this checked to start it up automatically when we click finish here. And there we go. This is what it should look like when you first start it up. And depending on the version that you download, the UI might change here and there every now and then. And so if it doesn't look exactly like this, that's completely normal, right? But what I like to do is click on over here on the right, click this over to expert mode. It just locks away or hides away some features that we'll typically need when starting up VMs. And so I don't know why they include that, but just make sure to click on expert mode there, or you might see that things are missing. And so just for a quick tour here, you'll notice we have these different sections or these tabs over on the left. Right now we're on the home menu, which allows us to do things like create a new virtual machine or import or export VMs. We also have an extensions pane here for VirtualBox extensions. We have a media tab here to add or create different hard disks or optical disks. And so once we start creating virtual machines, this will start to populate. We have a network tab here where we can create things like different networks that our VMs can use. We also have a cloud section here, which we're not going to worry about, and a resources section to let us know, hey, how much CPU and RAM and file system usage are our VMs using? And so this can be a good way to see how many resources can I allocate for each of my VMs. We can get a nice little graph here. And so that's pretty much it. If you did want to go the VirtualBox route, you can see it was quite simple to get installed and up and running.